Alright, this is the diplomacy video. This is gonna be scuffed. I'm gonna say that up front, but this is, this is everything. You wanted an hour-long diplomacy video, and that's what you're getting. It might not be an hour long, but we'll do our best. I'm gonna go over literally everything that happens in ridiculous amounts of detail. I don't know that it's gonna make a whole lot of sense. I don't even know if you understand the rules of diplomacy. I can, we'll explain it briefly and then we'll go on to it. But we see here, what we can see. Here's what we can see, Vlad. Vlad, this is what we're seeing. Is we can see the current state of affairs. You might be wondering in your little head, your sweet little head, how do we get here? Where did you find yourselves in this position that this is the place that we are? I've got the answers. First of all, how does diplomacy work? How does that happen? We've got 4 moves. You can move somewhere. That's move 1. And that means you move from one place to the next place. Simple. If 2 people try to move to the same place, they both hit each other and then bounce off. Like you know when you hit a marble with the desk toy marble things where they're on the strings and it bounces one end and then the other end goes back. Imagine you bounce them both in the middle simultaneously. They both go, they both swing back. You get the idea. You get it. But obviously, if you do that, that means it's really hard to take stuff. So how do you do that? Well, that's where move number 2 comes in, baby. Support. You can support a troop into another area, and that means it's there are 2 troops there, and 2 is a bigger number than 1. I do economics, so you can trust me on that one. And so that means you can take territory even if somebody else tries to contest it. Equally, you can support people when they defend. If somebody's trying to take your land and your wife, who you put in your land, then you might want to support or defend. I'm just saying. Sorry if I'm sniffling. I'm dying. That's irrelevant though. That's supporting. The 3rd move is convoy. That is where man is on one side of land, wants to go to other land. Boat in middle on water. Go over boat through convoy. I think I've explained that perfectly well. And the last move is just hold. Just hold. Just sit somewhere. Don't do anything. Just hold. It's fine. Just do it. And that's defensive. But also it can be not offensive, which not being offensive is pretty cool. That's why all my jokes are PG-2. So now that you have a perfect understanding of diplomacy. Oh yeah. Also. The game is set up in years. There's a spring and an autumn turn, and then at the end of each year there's winter, and in winter you build units and actually claim territories that you're in, kind of thing. So that's why sometimes you might take a territory in spring and then leave it and then not get the build for it. You build because you're not there in autumn. You've gone somewhere else for Halloween or whatever people do in autumn. Bonfire night. That's what they do. So yeah, that's diplomacy. It's the first one to have more than half of the territories. More than half, or exactly half. I think it's more than half. Hold on, let me Google. I don't know if this is gonna fuck up the recording. I won't Google. You know what? We're back. We're so back. We're gonna Google on something else. How many territories needed to win diplomacy? It's 18 or more, which you already knew because, as I said, I gave you a perfect understanding of the rules of diplomacy. If you've been paying attention, you would know this already. So yeah, 18 or more, meaning that there are 34 territories, or 35 maybe, because it's more than half, so it would be 17 plus 1, so it would be 34 or 35. as I say, I do economics. I'm pretty good with this whole numbers business. But yeah, that's diplomacy. That's the state of it. This is current day. Also, this is like the current move. Obviously, the diplomacy game, like, we've got like a week per move. That's so much time. That's infinite time if you think about it, because time is infinite, and therefore it can never be divided, which is probably not true. But I just said it, so. Yeah, so this is the current state of affairs. This is current move. It is yet to been resolved. We'll come back to this later, but at time of recording, it's the 23rd of December. I was gonna record this yesterday, but then didn't for reasons that are valid, and yeah, there's I'll get to current thoughts, current state of play when we get to it. But we begin, as all great shows do, in the beginning. Also, I hope you like the black bars at the side of the thing. I was gonna put like things there, but then that required effort that I was just not prepared to exert. And I'm pretty sure the black bars, they're not equal in width. Like the left one I think is like way larger than the right one. So that's a feature that was intentional by me, because it represents how France on the left is bigger and better than all of the nations on the right, apparently. So what? We start in the start. I draw France randomly, just drawn it, and we begin like this in our own respective countries. Everyone's got at least one fleet. A thing to note is that the Russians have 4 troops, 2 of them being fleets, because Russia is big and big, so they need like more troops to cover the area for it to be fair. But yeah, so I draw France randomly. A thing to note about this game, you might be aware of this anyway, this is a 5-player game, meaning that Italy and Germany, these scoundrels, look at them, they're not in the game, they're unmanned. They've got troops that just sit on their home territories and defend, but they're not going to move anywhere. This leads us to 2 ideologies, 2 belief systems about how, we can approach this 5-player variant, because we've got these troops here. So these territories are harder to take, right? You've got to have a guy supported into it by another guy. That's 2 guys. That's so many. But also, they're not going to attack. So you could have 2 ways of looking at it. The way I looked at it, the correct way, the objectively brilliant way that only geniuses would think of, is these territories are, they're nice and all, but effectively there's just a big wall right in the middle of the board, right? It's going to be harder for me to attack Russia because there's Germany in the way, and likewise Austria. There's an Italy between us. We can't go to war with Austria because Italy's there, and it'll take 10 years, and I haven't got that much time. So I kind of saw it as, okay, these troops here are buying me time to take the Spain and the Portugals and maybe the Belgiums and the Hollands and whatever, and then when I've got a big army and maybe I've killed Britain, that might be part of the idea. This is before I've spoken to anyone. At that point, then I can start thinking about killing Italy and attacking Austria, or killing Germany and going after Russia, or whatever, right? That's the way that I see it, an intellectual. And that's my sort of foolproof plan to the approach to the game, the opening strategy. And that informs my moves here that you can see with your little beady eyeballs. The first one we'll talk about, Paris to Picardy. I'm going after Belgium. I'm going to take Belgium. Look at Belgium there. It's going to be mine. And Brest to Mal. That's me going to Spain and Portugal. It's going to happen. Same for Marseille to Spain. I'm going after both in one turn. I want both of them. Again, I've got to be there at the end of autumn to claim them. So I've got to get them both now. And then I'll have 3 whole builds. You can only build in home territories. I've got 3 home territories. 3 is equal to 3. That sounds pretty optimal performance if you ask me. Yeah, so I do that. That's my move. Because I'm thinking, I don't need to worry about fighting Austria. I don't need to keep that troop in Marseille in the region. There's nothing for me to do there. I can't take Venice or Rome or anything like that. And it would be foolish to try. So the issue is that, to quote fucking General Eisenhower, maybe, even the best laid plan rarely stands first contact with the enemy. I don't know who said that. It was someone, definitely. I've heard it before, so it must be true. We meet the fool, the Gormless Rube, Austria, also known as my real-life actual father, who conceived me. This fool, he saw things a different way. He thought, ooh, territories, early territory, me get them early, me get early territory, me get. And so he went after Italy early, and that kind of defines a lot of what I do in the early part of the game. But we'll get to that when we get to that. I think I should sort of foreground all of this with talking about, my biggest rival, my biggest opponent, just the big issue, just a problem all around. Britain and France, fun fact, don't get on. Britain, it's kind of like, they're there, they've got a fuck ton of boats, they got 2 boats, that's so many boats, that's twice as many boats as I have, and at some point, given this iron wall thing in the middle of Europe, I'm thinking I'm going to have to fight Britain, and I'm going to have to do it, soon, but, let's try and not do it immediately, because Britain might kill me immediately. So I concoct a devious scheme, a devious little trick that'll surely deceive my enemy. I say, hey Britain, wouldn't it be cool if I left you alone and, did the thing I was already intending on doing anyway and wasn't going to change depending on how you answered this question, and you went to war with Russia for no reason. Now, the reason why I say this, why do I say this? What am I saying? Is you see Britain here, they're sitting here, they're chilling. You see Russia over here, they've got some troops in the north, they're chilling. What we can observe is that, okay, me go to Russia, difficult, Germany in the way. Me go to Austria, difficult, Italy in the way. Britain go to Russia, well, there's Scandinavia in the way. But Scandinavia isn't like Germany or Italy. It ain't got no troops. Look at this troopless land. If Britain wants to go and attack Russia, there's just a bunch of empty fields in the way. And empty fields sounds like opportunity to me, because my ears have a severe infection. I'm taking flucloxacillin. This isn't true, but if it were true, then, it'd be pretty cool. Anyway, so Britain and Russia, they can attack each other, right? So I think, what a good idea it is to say to Britain, you should have a permanent war with Russia for the entire game and never leave war with Russia, because then you'll be really distracted. And Britain to say, okay, yeah, that sounds good. That'd be a great plan. So I say essentially that to Britain. And Britain says, oh, we should talk about where we're going, how we're getting territories. I'm like, okay, you can go into Holland here. I'm happy with that. You can even take Kiel one day, because I'm hoping that they keep all their forces, in this North German Scandinavian region, and that'll be a big vehicle medium thing, through which they can attack Russia and keep attacking Russia and not notice me when I try and kill them. You can take those territories. I'll focus on. I'll be in the Mediterranean. I'm going after Italy. That's what I'm doing. Not anything else. I'm going after Italy. So you can do that, and you can take Scandinavia or whatever and attack them. And we'll stay out of each other's way, and also no going in the English Channel. That's That's a no-no. No English channel. English channel off limits. DMZ, demilitarized zone, gone. No English channel. And Britain says, okie dokie, that sounds good. This is what we call a deal for the ages. Truly the art of the deal. Some people have compared me to the greats, you know. If I knew who the greats were, then I'd be saying them now. But people have been comparing me to them constantly. Honestly, it's getting a bit much, frankly. And yeah, so with knowledge that Britain maybe isn't going to try and kill me immediately, I go full steam ahead, confidently, into ending the first turn. This starting fucking 15 minutes, that's been turn 1, and a bit of like foregrounding. That's turn 1, baby, we did it. So what actually happened in turn 1, right? We know what I did. I did what you can see on the screen with the arrows, and the guy in Paris who looks like he's wearing a dunce hat because he's a fool. What actually happened? Well, let's find out. Let's find out. This is what actually happened. I don't know why this is different. There wasn't earlier, but now it is. So we're dealing with that emotionally. In terms of like the OBS window thing being a different shape and the map moving, that's fine. You're gonna live with that, Vlad. Because honestly, you don't deserve any better. Frankly, that's rude, but it's true. So what actually happened? Well, Britain, they move into the Norwegian Sea, moved into the North Sea. They're going towards Scandinavia. They move their army in Liverpool to York. Fair enough. Don't got any problems with it. I will note, this is kind of them saying, I don't trust you, to me, specifically, that it's targeted at me, it's all about me. Because in the event that instead of going into the mid-Atlantic with this fleet in Brest, I'd gone into the English Channel, they would, you know, not be able to defend London unless they pulled that fleet back. And then their army, like let's say they'd gone to Edinburgh instead, their army couldn't defend London, whereas now it's in York, it can defend London. And now this southern fleet, you know, can convoy their army to Holland or Denmark or whatever, and the northern fleet can just take Norway, and it's simple for them. Yeah, so this is them saying, I don't fully trust you on a turn 1 agreement. Fair enough, whatever. I forgive them. I'm a generous man, but not forgiving. But I forgive them this time. We see the fool, the gormless fool, rude man that I mentioned earlier. I repeated that phrase because I can. They go into Austria, and we're talking about Austria, just in case you weren't following. We're talking about Austria now, not anyone else. We're talking about Austria. They move from Budapest into Serbia. Fair enough, makes sense. Serbia, that seems pretty Austrian to me. They move Trieste into the Adriatic and Vienna into Tyrolia. This is concerning to me specifically. Venice into Tyrolia and the Trieste into the Adriatic is basically them saying they're going to take Venice. I said Venice earlier, I meant Vienna. Vienna into Tyrolia. You're following, you understand. You can understand what arrows on a map mean. Yeah, Vienna into Tyrolia, Trieste into Adriatic. They're going to take Venice. They're going to try and take all of Italy while I'm not able to stop them. They're opening up a window through which they might jump through at any moment and attack me. And equally, I might attack them through that window. So, you know, that's a problem. That's what we call a concern in the industry, in my industry, the defenestration industry. Yeah, so they do that. Another notable thing about this in moving into the Adriatic is that like this fleet could move into Albania instead, and like this army could move into Galicia instead. If that was the case, which I would have preferred, if the fleet moves into Albania, then Austria has a pretty good chance at getting Greece, because they can use the unit that would now be in Serbia to support it from Albania into Greece. And that would mean that basically they're permanently fighting Turkey properly, and they might even try and kill Turkey, to be honest. It wouldn't be out of the realms of possibility. And if they moved from Vienna into Galicia, they'd be attacking the Russians. All of this is to say is if they fucked off a different direction from the one that I was in, it would be better for me. This is the kind of revolutionary strategy that you get from a mastermind of diplomacy like me. Speaking of masterminds of diplomacy, we can see the not the Austrian, the Turkish move. Now, the Turkish have a brilliant strategy here. The Constantinople army, Istanbul, not Constantinople, they move it into Bulgaria because they want to take Bulgaria. Fair enough, seems reasonable. They need to build. Like, I think you'll notice about Turkey is they kind of only have like two ways out. They got Bulgaria, they got Armenia. Those are the only two ways out they got. Not got any other ways unless they learn to swim, right? So they move into Bulgaria, and then they move their fleet in Ankara. Fleets, by the way, are the triangles. Armies are the circles. I figured that you like realize that by now because you're an intelligent, wise old man with years of experience. They move the fleet into Constantinople. They are trying to get this fleet into the Aegean Sea, and then what they're going to do is like take Greece with Bulgaria and the fleet in the Aegean, and I don't know, maybe they'll be able to like attack Italy and Tunisia and things like that. Genius plan, great idea, love it. Could work, viable strategy, very reasonable. Does mean that they're not immediately going to attack Russia in the Black Sea, but it looks like Russia is committing northwards, which we'll get onto in a second. So not too much of a concern there, perfectly fine. Now, the third and final troop that Turkey uses, they try, it's an army in Smyrna, they try and drown it in the Aegean Sea. Now this is considered a suboptimal maneuver, really. What could this army have done differently? There are a couple options. The army could have gone into Ankara, just moved up. That way, if the Russians went to the Black Sea and were like trying to take something from Turkey immediately, there would be more defences on that northern shore. They could have moved into Armenia, and that would have threatened Sevastopol, and the Russians might have shat themselves. That would have been dangerous. They could have just not tried to drown it. That's also an option. But, you know, one of the reasons why I think they should have moved out of Smyrna instead of staying exactly where they are, which is effectively what happens, you know, the game doesn't let you actually drown the unit, is because Smyrna is on this nice Mediterranean coastline. They could potentially build another fleet here with that Bulgaria thing, have two fleets in the Mediterranean, and, you know, take Greece, maybe go for like Tunisia, maybe go for Naples, you know. They could expand like further than they realistically could, and have that outlook. You know, Turkey's problem in a lot of games, in this game particularly, is that they get boxed in, and that they've got no real way to get out because they just, you know, they can't get any more units because they can't expand, and they can't expand because they can't get any more units, and they just get boxed in. So this would have provided potentially a nice way for Turkey to find a way out of Turkey. And then we'll go to the Russians last of all. The Russians do a bit of a strange opening. We'll start from the south and head north, right? The Russians, they start by moving this fleet in Sevastopol into Romania. Now, this move has implications. It has ramifications, if you would. I don't know why the Rams have ifications. I don't know what they're up to. I don't trust them, frankly, but there we are. The fleet into Romania means, I'm not going to kill Turkey turn one, I'm not going to try and take the Black Sea. Cool, fine, normal. But it also is kind of an anti-Turkey move. And I say that because fleets, typically, they're good in water and on things right next to water, right? They can be on the coastline, they can be in the water, but they can't attack inland, right? So this fleet being in Romania can never threaten Budapest. It can never threaten Serbia. So it's kind of like, for Austria, they've got a wall on their right side now, right? They don't have to worry so much about Russia coming and killing them, because Russia, you know, the fleet can attack into the Black Sea, it can't attack into land. So it's kind of a pro-Austrian move and an anti-Turkish move in that way. The most baffling move we see here is the next move, Warsaw into Silesia. Now, this is weird. This doesn't make much sense. Warsaw into Silesia is kind of like them saying, I want to go up to Germany, maybe. whilst keeping my options open to go after Austria, perhaps. But it's kind of weak because they're going to need at least one other unit to get into Germany. Remember, they need to be supported because of the sort of stationary, motionless troops. And it's not very anti-Austrian. You know, if they had moved into Galicia, wow, hold on a minute. Austria's just left Vienna and Budapest, and Russia is in Galicia. Russia could take a home territory from Austria on turn 1. That's quite damaging. But Silesia? I mean, I guess they could maybe go into Galicia or Bohemia from Silesia, and that would be somewhat threatening. But it's unclear what the sort of justification for the move is. It doesn't really make sense what this unit's going to do. And what we're going to see in future turns is that for, you know, a couple of turns, this unit doesn't really contribute much. So yeah, a bit of a suboptimal move from Russia there. But it's going to be the first of many, let me tell you. This guy, honestly. If I called my father a fool, I don't know what this man is. Next we have these two moves in the north. Now Russia does a northern opening. They move their fleet into the Bothnian. This is to be expected, this is reasonable, because they're going to try and take Sweden on the next turn. They move the fleet into the Bothnian so that they can take Sweden. Makes sense, simple, no confusion there. And they move their army from Moscow into St. Petersburg. The idea of this is one of two things. The army here can deny the British Norway if it so chooses, because it could move into Norway and then bounce off. Or equally, it could move into Finland. If it does that, then it can support Sweden when they have Sweden more effectively. They could threaten Norway still. And yeah, so there are ideas behind this move. Typically, what I prefer in games where Russia is going into St. Petersburg, I prefer that they move into Finland after. The reason being is that you only have your starting build slots, right? So St. Petersburg is the only place you can make fleets in the north, right? You can make them in Sevastopol if you want, but in the north you need to build them in St. Petersburg. You know, that means if your army is in St. Petersburg, you can't build fleets there. And fleets are quite useful when you're, you know, look at how many seas there are. Bothnian, Baltic, Skagerrak, North Sea, Norwegian, Bering Strait. That's not the Bering Strait. You get the idea. Barents Sea. That's the sea. It's Barents Sea. So this is a bit confused. Well, it's a bit confused if you try and deny them Norway, because you don't really, you know, you open north, but then don't really give yourself the freedom to, you know, have another fleet there. And in the long run, what we might see is that Russia really starts to suffer because they just can't use these sea tiles to defend the north properly, to defend their positions in Scandinavia. Yeah, so that's the opening moves. That's all of the stuff that happens there, and you know, because of that, we get to a position much like this. So here, you know, we see the results of everyone's moves, and you know, I'm thinking in this position, okay, Italy's going, Austria's going after Italy. That's a bit of a problem, but Britain seems to be, you know, going after Russia, which is pretty good for me. And in this position, nothing of me is particularly under threat yet. I can just proceed as planned. So I move my army in Picardy into Belgium. I'll note that the army in Picardy, a second purpose of it, which I didn't really go into, was if the English do try to go into the English Channel, the army in Picardy can defend Brittany and defend Brest. So there's a sort of defensive side to the move Picardy rather than Burgundy. It's not much of a difference, but that's part of the idea. Anyway, that army can move into Belgium without having to worry too much because it's all going well. And in Iberia, in Spain and Portugal, I moved the Spanish army into Portugal and the fleet in the mid-Atlantic into the southern coast of Spain. Why do I do this? Why not just put the fleet into Portugal and keep the army where it is? The reason is that I want to get this fleet into the Mediterranean as quickly as possible. Italy is under attack by the Austrians. I need to be contesting the Mediterranean. That's just a logical conclusion I make, and because of that, I prefer to have the fleet closer and the army further away, because ultimately, what I'm thinking in this position is I can move the fleet into like the Gulf of Lyons or the Western Mediterranean if needs be, and I can convoy the army to somewhere closer to the front, and it'll be much quicker because you can convoy across multiple tiles, so armies can move really, really far if they've got the fleet to, enough fleets in place. So I can potentially get my army right to the front lines very quickly. So I do a little shuffle down here. That's the idea. Basically everything's going as normal. I don't really talk to anyone on this turn because it's pretty clear what I'm trying to do. There's nothing too convoluted about it. So at the end of this turn, I foregrounded a lot of this at the end of the last turn, but we get the results of the moves. We see the intentions behind all of these. So Austria does what they were aiming up to do. They move into Venice, from the Adriatic. They've chosen to put the army in instead of the fleet. This makes sense because it means they're going to move that fleet around and take out Italy more quickly. They're going to move it into the Ionian, maybe go for Naples in the next round. They're gonna take it. Oh, they're gonna take it. And they use their other army in Serbia to stop the Turkish from getting into the Greek peninsula, into Greece. This is bad for Turkey. Turkey, they try to go into Greece. They try to, replace the unit in Bulgaria with a unit from Constantinople. They try to drown the Smyrna unit again. Not a great decision, as I said, but it's a thing. They are now kind of boxed in. What we should expect to see in the near future is this Constantinople unit go into the Aegean. We should hope to see a unit in either Ankara or Smyrna to go into Armenia to threaten Sevastopol. This is the kind of thing that will keep Turkey in the game. So that's kind of what we should be looking to see. Russia, they have a go. I mean, the fleet here tries to do a clever little maneuver where if the fleet in Constantinople had gone into Bulgaria on the south coast, it would have destroyed the Turkish unit in Bulgaria because it would have had nowhere to go. Serbia's blocked, Romania's blocked, Greece is contested, so it would have killed a unit, which would have been, I guess, a little prank because Turkey would have immediately been able to rebuild it, but it would have been a prank, so that's kind of epic. Turkey went for the east coast, however, so Russia doesn't pull that off. So that's that. They stay in Romania to claim it. They also, in the north, they take Sweden with their fleet, as expected, nothing surprising there. And their army in St. Petersburg they used to keep Britain out of Norway. I perhaps mentioned, I believe, that they want this army not to be in St. Petersburg because they now are unable to build a fleet in St. Petersburg in the north, which is a concern for them, but I'm sure it'll all go fine and nothing will happen badly. If you just heard beeps or something, no you didn't. No you didn't. Russia's other unit, the one in Silesia, I mean, goes to Prussia. This is just dumb. This just doesn't make sense. What's it gonna do in Prussia? What can it do in Prussia? Attack Berlin? No, it needs another unit to help it attack Berlin. Can it be convoyed to Denmark or Sweden? Not really. It would take another fleet and it would take support. It would be way too much effort. And crucially, is it in Bohemia or Galicia where it can threaten Austria? No. So moving it to Prussia doesn't really make sense. Here what we should probably see from the Russian player is moving it into Galicia or moving it into Bohemia. But he doesn't do that, so that's not the world we live in. Britain, there's nothing too surprising. They
convoy their army in York into Holland, and they try to go for Norway but are denied by Russia. Nothing out of the ordinary there. Nice and simple. So, having seen that, we have to think about builds, and by we I mean me. So I decide I'm gonna build a fleet in the south, in the Marseille, and then I'll have 2 fleets in the Mediterranean, and I can go for Italy, and I can take Tunisia, and I can win in the south and kill Austria one day. And I'll build 2 armies in the north to go for Germany. That's the big plan. In retrospect, might have been a good idea to build a fleet in Brest instead of an army, and then try and, you know, harass Britain a little bit. Britain's quite weak right now, whereas if they become stronger later, it could be a problem for me. But I decide against that. I decide Britain's been a sort of we've got some sort of rapport building up. Let's let it ride and try and take Germany and Italy and focus on that rather than going to war with Britain. I think what I'm concerned about here is that I don't want to be at war with Austria and Britain at the same time. I think that's going to be too much for me to handle. We can see the builds, so you can see the builds I just talked about moments ago. We can see the other builds, the other players. Britain builds a fleet in London, nothing too surprising there. It's, you know, a little bit aggressive against me, but not too aggressive. If they build a fleet in Liverpool, then, you know, it's the end times. Britain's going to war with me. But London, it's fine. We don't worry about London too much. Russia builds 2 armies in Warsaw and in Moscow, respectively. This is okay, I guess. The army in Moscow is going to go north. The army in Warsaw maybe can go against Austria or can go into Silesia and attack Germany. So there are options here. I think perhaps they need to build in Sevastopol at some point. You know, that's kind of empty. They need a fleet at some point maybe, but this is okay. And Austria, Turkey builds an army in Ankara. I think this should be a fleet, flat out. I think they should put a fleet into the Black Sea and try and go into Romania or try and go into Sevastopol. Building an army here, this is just another unit that's never going to be able to, it's not going to be able to help Turkey get out of Turkey. Austria builds an army in Budapest, no real surprise there, and a fleet in Trieste, which is a little bit of a surprise, because a fleet in Trieste can't really, I mean, it's gonna go for Greece, right? That's the idea. It's gonna go for Greece, but it does leave Austria a little bit less defended than they would perhaps like to be. But to be fair, without Germany or an Italy player, and with Turkey being boxed in quite well, it kind of makes sense. Yeah, but the crucial point here is that it's bad for me, because this fleet is going to be, you know, securing this side of the map. The other fleet is going to be fighting me, so it frees up a fleet for them. Yeah, so in this position, I decide to move my fleets on the south into the Western Med, into the Gulf of Lyons, move my army in Portugal into Spain. This army next turn is going to go to Tunis. That's the plan. It's going to go on holiday to Tunis. My other fleet's going to go into the Mediterranean Sea, and from there we'll be able to fight Italy and kill Austria. In the north, I move an army into Picardy. Again, I'm covering Brest from Picardy, so I'm, you know, keeping things clean, and I'm moving from Paris into Burgundy, moving towards this Germany, Netherlands kind of area where I'm going to be doing my next campaign. Nothing too surprising there. And then we get the other people. There are other people who have their own moves. There's not too much for me to talk about with regards to communicating with other people, because, you know, at the end of the day, none of them do anything that, you know, can do anything that's too dangerous. There's no real agreement to be made here between anyone. Britain and I are talking to Russia, trying to get them to go south. We want them to fight Austria. I want them to fight Austria. Britain wants them to fight not them, and open up Scandinavia. So we are talking to Russia to try and get them to go south. But, you know, it's nothing major really. It's not like a massive alliance that's going on. There's just not that. It's not. You might think it's that. It's not. We see their moves. They're being the other players. Here they are. Um, Britain moves into Skagerrak, moves into Norway, Russia moves into Finland, moves into the Baltics, and Britain moves into the North Sea. That's the whole northern front, essentially. What changes? Britain is, pushing up. They've got Norway, and Russia is a bit more of a defensive position in Finland. Weirdly, Russia has decided to move this Moscow army southwards. This is weird. They could move it into St. Petersburg and then force it into Norway, or move it into Finland and have the unit go into Sweden. It seems like an opportunity to have a solid northern front, and instead they've only got 2 units in the north, and it's a bit weak. Yeah. They move this army from Prussia back down to Silesia. This army is achieving nothing. It's just bad. It's just badly placed. And they move their army in Warsaw down to Galicia. This is good. This is the result of Britain and I saying you should go and focus on Austria. They're putting pressure on Austria. Vienna and Budapest are going to be open. This is good from Russia. This provides them opportunities. They also support a Turkish hold. Don't know particularly why. There was no threat to Turkey. Yeah, that's Russia's moves. Britain, as I say, they move up, they push up, and they hold in Holland. This is a sort of show of goodwill that they're not attacking me. This army, I'll talk about a little bit. It is a threat to me, because fleets can't attack inland, armies can. So this army here, if I have a unit in the Ruhr at some point, which I'm planning on, it could attack that unit and, do damage to it and be dangerous. And likewise, if the Russians were to push through to Munich or something, they could help the Russians against me. So this army is a bit of a threat to me. I'd prefer Britain to have no armies and to just be a fleet-based power, but we'll see how that goes. Yes, we go to Turkey. Turkey gets that fleet out to the Aegean. They try to go to Greece again, but are blocked. They move an army up to Ankara. They don't put an army in Armenia. This is something they need to do at some point. Them not doing it is really just bad. It just leaves them in such a weak position. They don't have as many options. Given that Russia isn't in the Black Sea and isn't going for the Black Sea, it makes you're not leaving anything open if you move into Armenia. It's not like they can then go into Ankara or Constantinople. They would need to leave Romania, and that would just open up a space for you to move into. It seems like bad play from Turkey. Austria moves to try and take Italy. As I say, they move into the Ionian with their fleet. They move from Venice into Apulia. They're going to take Naples next turn. That's the idea. They move their fleet in Trieste to Albania, trying to go for Greece. They move that army in Budapest to Trieste. I don't really see the point of the army Budapest to Trieste move. It doesn't make much sense to me. Maybe the idea is they're gonna move the army in Serbia into Greece on the next turn, and then they'll move into Serbia and then attack Bulgaria, but they could just do that from Budapest. I don't see what the point is much, and are they gonna try and move it into Italy? Is that the idea? They're gonna fight me? That's gonna take too long. They should just have it. They should have just made it in Venice and move into Tyrolia if they were gonna do that. By having it in Budapest and then moving it to Trieste, they leave themselves open to the Russians who, have moved against them this turn. It's going to leave a vulnerability for Austria. It's going to drastically weaken their position and creates a massive problem for them. So that being the case, we look at what am I thinking in this position? What kind of moves am I making? In this position, I don't see anything that's too worrying. I think, the southern idea in the Mediterranean is still on. I'll take Tunisia, I'll convoy a troop there, and I'll move into the Tyrrhenian Sea, and, be next to Italy. I can start denying Austria its expansion in Italy, and gearing up to do my own expansion in Italy. And in the north, nothing much has changed either. I'm going to move from Belgium into the Ruhr, and move from Picardy into Belgium. The English went into the North Sea. They didn't go into the Channel, so I don't have to worry about Brest again. So yeah, I just form up, make my nice defensive position, having 3 troops in this little Belgium, Ruhr, Burgundy area is a nice defensive sort of structure because 2 of them can support the other one at any given time, and it provides it provides paths through which I could advance. I could take Holland, I could take Munich, kind of thing, because I can support the other troops. Yeah, so nothing too surprising for me. What I'm expecting in this turn is for Britain to go into Denmark. I'm expecting Russia to try and deny them. I'm expecting Austria to try and fight off Russia a little bit and to take this tip of Italy. And I'm expecting Turkey and Austria to continue fighting over Greece. And I'm hoping and praying that, Armenia happens, that Turkey moves to Armenia. If it doesn't, then Russia is gonna be not punished too badly for this army in Moscow, which isn't doing anything really. Should they have that army in Moscow? That's a point. They shouldn't have that army in Moscow. Fascinating. This army in Moscow is a technical error, and thus it shall be deleted. Bang! Yeah. Yes, so that's that state of play, that's what I'm thinking about. And so in this position, Alright, whatever. In this position, ignore the army in Moscow, apparently I can't get rid of it, which is a shame. In this position, my moves happen as they do. Yes, as one expected them to. Apologies, I told you this would be janky. I'm just being honest. So this is what other people do. This is what they do. This is their moves. This is what they're trying to pull. Am I looking at the wrong one? Yes, I am. Yep. Austria takes Naples, as expected. Tries to go for Greece, as expected. Moves into Budapest. They try to guess where the Russians are going. The Russians move into Vienna instead, so Austria is essentially gained Naples but lost Vienna, so they don't get any more builds. So it's kind of bad for them, one might even say. And this is a big weakness for them. The Russians' moves here are a bit weird. Why is Ukraine supporting Romania? What's the point in that? What does that achieve? For this to work, Austria and Turkey would have to agree to put, to kick the unit out of Romania. That doesn't seem very likely. That's not really happening. Austria and Turkey are having a big war. They could come to some agreement about kicking Russia out of Turkey. That would be a good idea for both of them. And maybe Austria says, "You help me into Turkey, I'll help you. I'll let you go into Greece." But it's not happening. It's not likely. I don't particularly see why Russia does that instead of moving this army in Ukraine into Galicia, and now all of a sudden Austria is just fully getting invaded and has a terrible defensive position. Likewise, this fleet assisting the army from Constantinople into Bulgaria doesn't seem to achieve much. It literally achieves nothing, so I don't really see the point. Turkey, again, stays boxed in, tries to go for Greece, is denied it. Doesn't move into Armenia. Still not sure why they're not doing that. It just seems like such an obvious move to threaten Sevastopol and to create opportunities for yourself. Yeah. Russia in the north does have some good ideas. So they move into Sweden with this army, which is a nice defensive idea. This is useful because it can attack Denmark, it can attack Norway, it can support other armies in the area, but it's not a fleet. This is the issue, right? This army in Sweden would be great if it was a fleet, because it could attack fleets in the area, it could support fleets in the area, and because there's so much water, in this province, as I perhaps mentioned, or well, as you can see, the army is kind of, a bit naff. It's not great, because if you had a fleet here, it could do all the same things as the army, and more. It could support and attack things in water provinces, which there are a bunch of. So this is why keeping St. Petersburg open is so important for the Russians, and it's why you're starting to feel the effects of it not having been open at this point. And we can also see that finally this unit in Silesia has some sort of justification. They use their fleet to support it into Berlin. They get the first German province of any power, and this is a good position. This is nice, because ultimately this can be used to attack Kiel. One day this can be used to attack Munich. This is good. This unit finally has some value, instead of just going to Prussia and then Silesia and Prussia and Silesia. It's got a purpose now, and this fleet doesn't really need to defend it, because it's surrounded by two neutral armies. The fleet can focus on defending Sweden or attacking Denmark or other things, right? This is good. We like this from Russia. I don't like this from Russia, but we sort of conceptually think this is a good Russia move. I think this is bad for me, because they're going to stop me from going into Munich, probably, or stop Britain going into Kiel, which is something I agreed with Britain they could do. So it's that kind of a thing where it's a good Russian move, definitely. Britain, for their part, goes into Denmark supported and holds in Norway so that they secure Norway. All makes sense. Their army in Holland still does nothing, still just holds. Perfectly fine, reasonable, light work. So in this position, we get our next builds. And our next builds look something like this. I've only got one, right, because I've convoyed into Tunisia. I've only got one build, and I'm starting to think, hold on, Britain has got one, they might get another. I should build a fleet in Brest, just in case, basically. If I don't build a fleet in Brest, Britain could build a fleet in London, and all of my armies are over here. It'll be very dangerous for me. I need to build a fleet in Brest, and one day, that'll be important for attacking Britain as well. This is just a solidifying defensive move. I might even keep this fleet in port just to stop there being too much threat against me. This fleet should be in Denmark. Britain's getting two builds. That's the point. They could put a fleet in Liverpool and a fleet in London and murder me. So I need a fleet in Brest just to, shore up my defensive position. I don't know why my sandboxes have some positions wrong. They shouldn't do. In fact, this is very wrong. This is terrible. I don't understand what these disbands aren't real. You know what? We're gonna get rid of that. Let's move on to this map. This shows actual fleets. Yeah. Russia builds two armies, one in Moscow, one in Warsaw. Britain builds a fleet in London and a fleet in Edinburgh, which is a positive sign to me. I communicated with them that I was going to build a fleet in Brest that I felt was a defensive move, and they said, yeah, alright, that makes sense, that's fair enough. So part of the reason I told them was because if they didn't know I was going to do it, maybe they would have tried to betray me, and if they build the fleet in Liverpool, maybe that means that they just kind of have to go to war with me, even if they no longer want to try because of the fleet in Brest. Because the fleet's in Liverpool rather than Edinburgh, they have to try, kind of thing. So by telling them in advance, I'd sort of de-escalate the situation. I make it a bit safer for me, and the fleet build in Edinburgh is not offensive to me in any way, shape, or form, so that's fine. So we come upon my next move, my next turn, what am I thinking? What I'm thinking is something like this. I try and go for Munich. I want to take Munich. If I have Munich, as I said perhaps earlier, I have this nice gateway between me and Austria from the north, and I can start toying with the Russians and so on, and maybe go for Kiel, maybe go for Berlin, and so on and so forth. I'm going to try and take Munich this turn. My army in Belgium will just hold. I don't want to go against Britain just yet. I think they've been a good ally so far, and for the same reason my fleet in Brest holds. I will vacate it at some point, maybe moving into Picardy or moving into the Mid-Atlantic, so that I can build another fleet there, but for the time being, nothing too dramatic, nothing too much to worry about. In the Mediterranean, I ship my army in Tunisia into Tuscany and then replace the army in Tunisia with a fleet. So this is just a good move. It lets me look at Venice. It lets me look at Rome. I could potentially take either of those two territories, and Austria all of a sudden can be less confident in their ability to secure Italy, and can be less confident in their position in the Ionian. I've got fleets here. You know, I'll have two of them, one in Tunisia, one in Tyrrhenian. I could move my fleets into the Ionian Sea and kick them out and be in a really strong position. So that's the kind of thing. I'm yawning. Don't even worry about it. So those are my moves. Those are my ideas. In this position, I don't even consider that Russia is going to stop me from Munich. It's a thought in the back of my head, but I think Russia should be focused in this position on denying Britain, because they're at war with Britain. And speaking of Russia, by the way, they have a vacant St. Petersburg and don't use it. And I'll point out, by the way, that this army in Finland should actually be in Sweden. My maps are so wrong. Anyway, they should have built a fleet here. Or South Coast or North Coast, it doesn't matter which, they should have built a fleet. Because without it, Sweden's going to be so difficult to hold. It's going to be near impossible, and they're going to lose it. And if they lose Sweden, they will lose Berlin, and all of this northern business will have been for nothing, basically. And it could go so far as them losing St. Petersburg. And if they lose St. Petersburg, they're never going to kill Britain. It's just not going to be possible. So that's a bit of commentary on Russia. The army of Warsaw is completely reasonable. I don't think it's as decisive as building a fleet in Sevastopol, because they could start killing Turkey, but it's definitely a good move. It'll add to their German campaign. The army of Ukraine will be used in Galicia, so they've it's more likely than not this army is going to Silesia. It could also be used in Austria, I suppose, if this fleet in Romania went into the Black Sea, the Ukrainian army went into Romania, and then Galicia is open for this Warsaw army to move into. They have 3 units surrounding Budapest. They could potentially take Budapest and start absorbing, eating, gobbling up Austria. That's that. Those are my builds and my moves, and their builds and not their moves. Here are their moves. Those aren't their moves. Here are their moves. Where the hell are their moves? Here are their moves. Kapow. Their moves are here. So as we see, first of all, Russia denies me Munich. Stupid. Dumb. They let Britain move into Kiel. This is bad for Russia, because now Berlin, the Baltics, Sweden, all under threat. Russia significantly weakens their own position and annoy me for no reason. I'm now not going to, help Russia, really, unless I get a hell of a lot out of it. And there's not much Russia can really give me. They move into Silesia, which says to me that they want to take Munich. I'm not going to let them take Munich. I'm never going to do that. I'm just going to let them die. So, weird move from Russia. They support Sweden with this fleet. That's okay. I would say that's reasonable. They need to keep the fleet there. They move into St. Petersburg. Now, with this army in Moscow. Now think about this, right? This army, the Russia player has decided they want on the northern campaign. They want this army to help in Scandinavia. Why would they build it in Moscow instead of St. Petersburg? St. Petersburg is closer. They could have had an army or a fleet in St. Petersburg and immediately mobilized it to the front. It would have been on the front, frankly. It would have started there. Instead, they've got to move it all the way from Moscow to St. Petersburg and then move it, and then, they're giving Britain time to get more units in when they don't have to. It just doesn't make sense. So they move, they deny me Munich, they move into Silesia, they move the Ukrainian army into Galicia, they move their army in Vienna into Trieste. This is an infiltration kind of idea. They give up their control of Vienna to take control of Trieste, and the idea behind it is that the army in Trieste will be able to, disrupt the sort of front line of the Austrians. They'll be able to make it difficult for the Austrians to defend. It's not a terrible idea, but of course comes with the risk that essentially you didn't have to do this. You could have just stayed in Vienna and they wouldn't be able to kick you out. And if you had stayed in Vienna, you would have been able to have 2 units on the front and do a lot more damage to Austria. But they go for the infiltration, and it threatens Venice. It threatens a lot, because they could, use that army to support moves into Budapest, into Vienna. And yeah, they keep their fleet in Romania. At this point, that makes sense because they're not likely to hold Romania if they vacate it and move into the Black Sea, so that's fine. And this is also the point at which I should mention Turkey gives up. They resign. They haven't had any opportunities the entire game, partly because of their bad moves, and they decide they're not going to have any, better chances in the future. They give up, which allows this move of Austria into Greece, which is crucial because it means Austria, on their next turn, will get a build, and that build is going to be in, Budapest, say, and that'll be an army, and that means that Austria all of a sudden will have an extra unit to defend with, and will probably be immediately stable and not have to worry too much about being invaded by Russia. They will be being invaded by Russia, but it won't be too problematic for them. So this being the case, did I just fuck everything up? Hold on. Nope, we're fine, we're good. I didn't fuck anything up. I'm so goated with the source. This being the case, what do I think? What are my next moves? So we reach this kind of a position, and I decide, okay, Russia's going to go for Munich. I'll use my troop in Burgundy to hold Munich and to stop the Russians from getting it. My fleet, I want to build another fleet in Brest, so I'll move it out of Brest into Mid-Atlantic. Why move it into the Mid-Atlantic instead of the English Channel? 2 reasons. One, if I move it into the English Channel and England decides they're going to move another fleet from the North Sea into the English Channel, it'll bounce, and then the fleet will remain in Brest, which means I can't build another fleet. So, most important thing for me is that I get 2 fleets on the north, and so moving to the Mid-Atlantic secures that, guarantees that I'll be able to have that second build. Also, if I have it in the Mid-Atlantic, it's now only 2 away from Liverpool, whereas if I have it in the English Channel, it's also 2 away from Liverpool, but less likely of happening. And if it's in the Mid-Atlantic, it can support a fleet into the English Channel. There's valid reasons why putting it into the Mid-Atlantic is just secure, and also allows me access to the North Atlantic Ocean, which can be a nice idea for taking Liverpool from the north and sort of surprising Britain, outflanking them. There's this move in Holland. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, and I'll come back to it. In the south, I take Rome, very simple, and I try and contest the Ionian, very simple. If I get this fleet into the Ionian, it's very difficult for Austria to get rid of me, because I can have a fleet in the Tyrrhenian and a fleet in the Ionian just holding each other, and it's really difficult for an Austria that has 2 fleets. It can only support one into the Ionian, for example. It can't displace it if I just support it, the Ionian with the Tyrrhenian. So it's a nice idea. If I get a fleet into the Ionian, I am basically secure on my southern front. It's a great move for me. It's something that Austria realistically has to try and deny. At this point, what I'm thinking is going to happen, the reason why I go for Rome instead of Venice, for example, is that I think this army in Apulia is going to go back to Venice to try and deal with this Russian threat and to stop them from moving into Venice. That's what I'm thinking. So at this stage, I'm thinking I'm probably going to get 1 build this turn. That's going to be used for a fleet in Brittany, in Brest. That's all well and good, and it will leave me on 8. Britain is going to move up to 7 or 8, and Russia is already on 8. Maybe can find a 9th somewhere, right? They could maybe find a 9th in Austria, perhaps. Or even they could try and take Kiel back, or well, not Kiel back, but take Kiel from the British, right? There are options here for Russia to get a lot. In order for me to stay or sort of on par with the game leaders, I'm thinking that I need another build. I need not only the fleet in Brittany, I need an army or a fleet in Marseille that I can use to go to war with the Austrians and take out Italy and that kind of thing. As I've sort of been thinking the entire game. The only two places where that's really possible for me to get is Munich, which, as I say, I think the Russians are going to go for it, which means that I can't really go for it, or the Netherlands, or Holland. And so I decide I'm going to go into Holland. There are a couple of advantages to this. It makes my position defensively quite secure, and I'm thinking if I get two builds, or if I get two builds, or at least one build, I build that fleet in Brittany, and right now Britain's only sitting on one new build. They're only sitting on Kiel. If they don't get another build from somewhere, if they don't take Sweden because it's defended, or some such, or they manage to trade in Norway, don't manage to get a net of one, then they'll only build one fleet, probably in London, and I will have a pretty good chance of taking Liverpool, and killing Britain is on the horizon. It seems quite possible. And I think, okay, if I'm going to try and kill Britain now, then this is the time to strike. I'll kill their army in Holland. It'll make defending Kiel more difficult for them on their next turn, and it gets rid of that army that I said was annoying, that could attack inland against me in the Ruhr and things like that. That's what I'll do, and I can use it for another army in Marseille, or a fleet in Marseille, and if it's an army, I'll go attack Italy with it. If it's a fleet, I'll rotate it through Spain to the Mid-Atlantic and attack Britain with it. That's the idea, that's the manoeuvre, that's what we want to see. That's my moves, that's what I'm thinking. Let's see what actually happens, let's see what actually goes on. Where are we? We are here. What actually happens, the real story, is this. Britain, we'll start with them, does manage to get a second build. They get into Norway, get from Norway into Sweden, and then replace the fleet in Norway. This destroys the Russian unit there, and their unit moves into Finland. This is actually not too terrible a thing, because Russia is on 8. They're going to trade in Trieste, they don't lose anything there. So they lose 1 here. If Russia can find in the nearish future another build, they can build that fleet in St. Petersburg, where I've been saying that they kind of want to. Without that, very difficult to see them ever taking back Scandinavia. Britain now has Denmark, Norway and Sweden. They've won Scandinavia. They've won the Northern War, essentially. And so Russia, you know, by moving the army to Finland, vacate it, leave it open for the possibility of a fleet in the future. In Britain's other news, the way they take Sweden is by using this fleet in Kiel to disrupt the fleet in the Baltic Seas, support of Sweden, and then just supporting from Norway into Denmark. They defend Denmark in case Russia tries to kill it. Makes sense. Yes, and one of the things I talked to Britain about is that I wanted to take Munich. The only way I could do that is if they used their fleet to attack Berlin and allow me and disrupt the Russian support into Munich, and then I could take it. They decided against this because they wanted to go for their own expansion in Sweden, which is reasonable. When I say it's reasonable, I mean I don't forgive them, but it's what I would have done. I go through with my betrayal on Holland. They didn't see it coming, they never do. And I take Rome, and in the south. I also move into the Mid-Atlantic, that's completely fine. In Austria, we'll start with Italy. As suspected, this unit in Apulia moves to Venice. Austria does this kind of weird idea of supporting their fleet into the Ionian. It prevents my fleet from going into the Ionian, but now they've left Naples open, and because their army in Apulia has gone to Venice, Naples looks pretty easy for me to take. And by pretty easy, I mean I'm gonna do it. It might be an idea that they're trying to get these two fleets around to try and kill off Turkey, because Turkey now no longer submitting moves means that, you know, if Austria is able to, they can get potentially 5 supply centres here. They could get Greece, Bulgaria, Constantinople, Smyrna, and Ankara. That's powerful. That's big. So maybe that's part of the idea. In Austria itself, we have a bit of a clusterfuck. In Vienna, the unit in Vienna tries to support Serbia into Trieste. Trieste tries to support the unit in Galicia into Vienna. These are essentially the same move mirrored, and so nothing happens. All the units stay where they are, which results in Austria taking Vienna back and Russia taking Trieste back. A 1-for-1 trade. Crucially, the point here is this is good for Austria, because Austria is able to keep its new build in Greece. It's able to keep another unit building, keep another space supply centre for another unit to be built. This means that on their next turn, on the build phase, which is about to happen right now, they are going to build an army in Budapest. It's literally their only legal move. It's gonna happen. They'll have 3 armies surrounding this unit in Trieste. Russia won't have any opportunity to kill Austria. It's just not going to happen. Their unit is also now in Vienna. There's nowhere for that unit in Trieste to go. It's going to be pushed out of Austria necessarily. There's no other way about it. So that's that. That's all that. That is all that. And we go to build. I do as I say. I'm going to build a fleet in Brest and an army in Marseille. Now this is like present day. This is like a couple days ago. So the situation basically is I reckon Britain's pretty upset with me. So I try and de-escalate the situation. I try and say, Britain, we can be best buds. I had to kill you in Holland because I need an extra build. I'm happy to give you Holland back. You can go back into Holland. Go back into Holland. Do what you want in Holland. Go to Holland. I'll move back to Belgium with my army. I'll get my other builds and support my army from Naples, from down south. You don't have to worry about it. And you know, we'll just do a nice little, you know, nothing to worry about kind of situation, and propose, you know, a sort of sea control agreement type deal where we both kind of get what we want in that neither of the others get into the territories. That's being worked on. That's a work in progress as we speak. At time of recording, nothing, you know, concrete has been suggested, but they've said that they might be willing to de-escalate, so that's nice. They've said they don't trust me anymore, which to be honest I don't know why they ever did, but you know, that's that. Yeah, I was heavily debating the idea of building a fleet in Marseille, moving it through Spain to the Mid-Atlantic and having 3 fleets, and then, you know, I'm worried that Britain is essentially going to try and kill me next turn. That's the worry. But I thought, chances are Britain won't try and outright murder me completely. Chances are they won't be able to completely murder me next turn. So in that case, it's kind of okay for me to build this army. If I can get Venice and Naples next turn, or maybe get Munich perhaps, I'll have another build. I can build the 3rd fleet, and the 3rd fleet I'm completely secure. Basically, I'm not worrying at all about Britain, and then continue playing the game as normal. Austria, as I say, builds this army in Budapest. Literally their own illegal move, makes sense. Britain, having gained Kiel in Sweden this turn, builds a fleet in Liverpool. Again, remember earlier I said fleet in Liverpool is aggressive against me. That's them saying they want war, and I'm gonna give it to them. And they build a fleet in London. The fleet in London is going to move into the English Channel, or it's going to try to. The fleet in Liverpool is going to move into the RSC, or it's going to try to. This depends on what kind of agreement we strike up. But yeah, that's kind of what's going on. That's the builds, that's what's going on. So, current day, right now, right here, right now, at time of recording, me speaking to you, what's the state of play? What are we thinking? What's going on? This is the current game board. This is what's actually going on. And, you know, a whole bunch is happening. So, what am I thinking? What am I considering doing? Well, a few things. First of all, we're going to create a sandbox. A sandbox is like a box but made out of sand. And this is where we're going to try and simulate the moves and plan ahead. And I'm going to tell you my thought processes as succinctly as possible. So, it's spring 1904, right? What am I thinking is about to happen? Well, in general, one thing we can know is that Turkey's not doing anything. We can just factor that in. Turkey, not going to do anything. That's fine. What else is going to happen is unclear, kind of. I think that in this position, it might be a good idea for me to get the Russians back into the game. One of the ideas I have is I say to Russia something along the lines of, I'll let you go into Munich if you let me do some sort of maneuver like this, where I go into Kiel, I don't actually leave the Holland, the Netherlands, and next turn you support me into Kiel, we kick Britain out of Kiel, out of Germany, and leave them in Scandinavia. This will leave you with an opportunity to, you know, sort of come back into this Northern War, get a supply centre which you can use to build a fleet. That's the idea, and we'll have a sort of partnership agreement. I'll do something like this, they'll try and do something like this and that, because they're expecting it to work, and they'll probably try for ideas like this. And maybe that's a move, and that's kind of an idea for the Northern War. In the south, I'm probably going to do something like this, where I move into Naples. I'm pretty confident I can get this Naples build. Austria does have to spend time kicking the Russians out of Trieste, and they can't really move into Piedmont against me, because this unit in Marseille, which I hear have moving into Burgundy, I move back south to Marseille if they move into Piedmont, so it's safe, it's not too much to worry about, and also it leaves Venice open. On my next turn I could try and move into Venice. This kind of thing is an idea from me, and you know, we have a position where the Russian unit's going to end up in Tyrolia. The Russians have a nice sort of German presence. They can try and get Venice in the future. There are opportunities for the Russian player to come back into the game. Another thing is that another suggestion I have, which is kind of congruent to this, is that I move this unit from Marseille to Burgundy and continue with this whole plan of shifting upwards to Belgium and betraying Britain again. And then I move this fleet in Tunisia into the Western Mediterranean, and make an agreement with Austria that they are going to go into the Aegean with this Ionian fleet, and we'll have a DMZ in the Ionian, and they can take out Turkey and get a bunch of points, supply centres from that. They'll have taken out this this Russian business, and they can take Bulgaria, take Constantinople soon enough, and start building up and, you know, have winning opportunities. That's one idea. Another idea, alternatively, is... Can I clear all my orders? No. Another idea, alternatively, is I just continue, is that I actually do what I said I was going to do to Britain, with Britain. I do something like this, and I do something like this where I move back into Belgium, prevent the Russians from getting into Munich, and have some sort of bouncing agreement in the Irish Sea and English Channel with Britain, and, you know, from that position, they are kind of happy with me. They probably aren't going to try and kill me. They get Holland back, and I can get Naples back and go for Venice on my next turn. All is kind of well, more or less. I'm unclear if this is a winning position, but it definitely is a position one could reach, definitely. Yeah, it's alright. It's not terrible. I'm undecided, as you can probably tell. What do I think I'm actually gonna end up doing? I'm unclear. It depends if the Russians make an agreement with me. It depends if the Austrians make an agreement with me. It depends if Britain seems to be willing to act in good faith with me, or seems willing to trust me. In the end, my sort of evaluation of my current position, present day, is my biggest threat is Britain, without a doubt. Britain is gonna try and invade me, or has the resources to invade me. That's the way to think about it, is they have got this extra fleet in the North Sea that they could use potentially to help London into the English Channel. If they do that, then Brest is under fire, Mid-Atlantic Ocean is under fire. If I do something like this, then that stops that, but they get into the Irish Sea and they'll get into the English Channel next turn. If I do something like this, then they get into the Irish Sea, they'll get into the English Channel next turn. There's no clean way to defend from Britain. I just have to delay them long enough to have an extra fleet build, I think, is the idea. Part of the idea of this move, Tunis to Western Med, that I mentioned earlier, is that I forgo worrying about an extra fleet build. I move a fleet over manually. I'm unclear about this because there are lines where, I leave and the Austrians try to take Tunis from me, or they have now a position to threaten Rome, kind of thing. It's a bit uncertain, it's a bit unclear. But that's the current view. If I had to guess what's gonna happen, I would say that Britain is probably gonna try and kill me a little bit. Russia is probably gonna do something really dumb. The Russia player is prone to making bad decisions. Turkey is going to remain AFK, and Austria is going to have a stable position, and probably at some point will make an agreement with either Britain or myself to have a two-player victory, where combined we control enough to, win, but individually we don't. and that's diplomacy. That's the situation. That's the hour-long video that you wanted. Yeah. I don't know particularly where to go from here. I will say, I'll say some words. Why not? I didn't plan any of this, but I'll do a bit of talking. I think the first thing to say is, have a Merry Christmas, Happy Christmas, have the Yuletide, Merry, 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 Merry. So, have a Happy Christmas, Vlad. Have a good Christmas. It's been nice. It's been nice being your friend thus far. No complaints. That could change though. So watch yourself. Really look out. And yeah, I think I'm not good at heartfelt messages, and I'm not good at emotional maturity or vulnerability. So we're gonna leave it at the point that you're a good guy, you're a nice man, and I'm happy to be your friend, and to proud to say that I'm your friend. And yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your holiday. I hope that you have a nice new year. I can't wait to see you again in the new year. And I hope you liked this. I hope that this was in some way had some value to you. I don't know how it could. I mean, I'm gonna be real, right? This has been incredibly scuffed. I had to figure out how OBS works to do this. I had to figure out how to capture parts of screen. Look, if I edit this in real time, there's just shit happening. Look at this. Oh my god, I'm fiddling with things, and it's layered. Look at how you can see both maps. And you can see the rest of the website. It's just bad. It's so unprofessional of me to show you behind the curtain where the little man lives. And I had to set up a sandbox thing. Turns out, as we noticed in the fucking 40th minute, I didn't even do it right. I didn't do it right. I did it wrong. Wrong is not right. Right is bad. No, wait. But yeah, no, it was it was a time. I also, this is, you know, something for you to think about. I'm gonna when the is I fucking I wrote as I wrote prep. I prepped for this. I wrote 6,000 words. That's like more than most of my dissertations I've ever done. And you know, were they good? Eh, they were alright words. Did I really use them? I had them as prompts. So like if I needed to, I could refer to them. But you know, I did some thinking about it, and yeah. So I hope you had some sort of value in it. I also need to figure out how to like edit this together, because this is now 2 videos. It was originally meant to be 1, but then it's Christmas time. You know, the extended family arrive at the house, you know, to say Merry Christmas and things. So now it's 2 like 50-minute videos, or a 30-minute video and a 50-minute video. I'm gonna have to like edit them together. You might like, you know, notice that at some point. We're gonna hope not, but it's gonna happen. It's unavoidable, really. And yeah, I'm gonna buy you some strip waffles at some point. That's not a surprise. That's a token of thank you. It's recompense for the strip waffles you bought me. I enjoyed them. They were very nice. Thank you. I like the mug you gave me. I drink water out of it, which is one of my favourite liquids, frankly. Yeah, I don't know what more to say. There's not much quality. Also, there are black bars. I feel like I'm playing Counter-Strike. It's great. I mentioned that earlier. Yeah. Have a great Christmas. Have a happy holidays. And if you want to, like, I don't know, actually play diplomacy, like fucking like play it with me and other people, fucking I'm down anytime you want, buddy. Yeah. Happy Christmas. Goodbye. Bye. Ding dong, ding dong. I can't do the deeper notes anymore, I'm sorry. I used to be in a choir, but just not anymore. Okay, goodbye.